Veronica raised her crystal flute of vintage champagne, and the massive, opulent banquet hall fell into a hushed, expectant silence. It was one of those heavy, uncomfortable silences that always seemed to precede a disaster. I was seated at a table near the back, placed intentionally close to the kitchen doors, far away from the flashing cameras and the glowing centerpieces of the VIP section. Beside me sat my granddaughter, Lily, her 20-year-old hands clenched into tight, trembling fists in her lap. My son, Marcus, stood next to his wife on the grand stage. He was wearing a bespoke tuxedo that cost more than I used to make in a year, looking at Victoria with a mixture of awe and that pathetic, nervous submission I had come to know so well. The air in the ballroom was thick, with the scent of roasted duck, expensive perfumes, and the undeniable stench of corporate greed. Everything was bathed in the cool blue and silver lighting of Novateka's branding. "I want to thank you all for joining us tonight," Veronica began, her voice echoing perfectly through the state-of-the-art sound system. Her tone was smooth, practiced, and dripping with a manufactured warmth that made my stomach turn. She wore a stunning emerald green gown, her hair pulled back into a severe, modern style. She looked like a predator, disguised as a philanthropist. "Tonight, we celebrate the 10th anniversary of Novatech, 10 years of innovation, growth, and boundary-pushing success." Polite, wealthy applause rippled through the room. I did not clap. I simply stared at my untouched plate, feeling the cold weight of the silver fork near my hand. Beside me, Lily's breathing was shallow and erratic. As we look forward to the next decade, and specifically to our exciting new partnership with Apex Equity Holdings, Veronica continued, gesturing gracefully toward a table of men in dark suits at the front. "We must also make some difficult, yet necessary, transitions. Novatech is a company of the future, and to embrace the future, we must gracefully retire the past." I felt my chest tighten. I knew that corporate doublespeak. It was the same tone she used when she told me my antique furniture was cluttering her modern aesthetic. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, who was with us in the very, very early days, will be officially stepping down from all her legacy board duties, effective tomorrow, Veronica announced, looking out over the crowd, searching for my face in the shadows. When she found me, she offered a smile so icy it could have frozen water. "Marcus and I have decided that it is time for Eleanor to enjoy her twilight years without the stress of the corporate world. We are transitioning her to a wonderful, full-time care facility where she can be properly looked after. Let us all raise a glass to Eleanor's retirement." The words hit me like physical blows. A care facility, a nursing home. She was publicly announcing my exile, stripping me of my dignity, in front of 400 of the city's most influential people, wrapping my forceful eviction in a bout of fake familial concern. A murmur of polite, confused sympathy rustled through the crowd. Marcus looked down at his polished shoes. Coward. He had always been a coward when it came to her. I felt the heat of humiliation rising up my neck, burning my cheeks, but I didn't say a word. My throat had completely closed up. Then Lily stood up. The abrupt scraping of her chair against the marble floor cut through the polite applause. She didn't have a microphone yet, but her voice rang out clear and filled with a cold, terrifying fury. "Actually, Veronica," Lily shouted, stepping away from our table and walking directly toward the center aisle. "You're the one who is going to be retiring tonight." Veronica froze, her champagne glass hovering in the air. Marcus's head snapped up, his face draining of color. The entire ballroom held its collective breath. But to understand how we got to this exact moment, How a 20-year-old college student and her 68-year-old grandmother were about to detonate a bomb in the middle of a multi-million-dollar corporate gala. I need to take you back 10 years, to the day I risked everything I had for the son who just stood by while I was thrown away. My husband, Thomas, died of pancreatic cancer when I was 55. We had been married for 32 years. We owned a modest, beautiful antique shop in the historic district of our city. It wasn't a lucrative empire, but it was our life. When Thomas passed, the silence in the shop became unbearable. Every ticking grandfather clock, every dust-covered armoire, felt like an echo of a ghost. Marcus was 25 at the time. He was a brilliant, anxious boy with a degree in software engineering and a head full of dreams that were always just out of his reach. A few years after his father died, Marcus came to me. He was sitting at my kitchen table, looking exhausted and desperate. He had a blueprint for a software platform that he swore would revolutionize logistics management. But he needed capital. The banks had laughed him out of their lobbies. Angel investors wouldn't give him the time of day. "Mom, I just need a chance," he had pleaded, his hands trembling around his coffee mug. "I know this will work. I just need the seed money to build the prototype and hire a small team." I looked at my son, the boy I had carried, the boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged, the boy who looked so much like his father when he was passionate about something. I didn't hesitate. I sold the antique shop. I sold the inventory. I took out a second mortgage on the house Thomas and I had paid off decades ago. I handed Marcus a cashier's check for $250,000. It was every single cent I had to my name. In exchange, because Marcus insisted on doing things properly, his lawyer drafted an agreement. I became the founding investor, holding exactly 51% of the shares in his new company, Novatech. "I'll pay you back 10 times over, Mom," he promised, hugging me so tightly I could barely breathe. "We're going to be partners." And for the first few years, we were. Those were the golden days. Novatech started in a cramped, rented garage space on the edge of town. I was there every day, while Marcus and his 2 programmers coded until their eyes bled. I brought them homemade sandwiches. I balanced the checkbook. I cleaned the small bathroom. I answered the phones. I was the silent engine, keeping the train running while my son built the tracks. When the software finally launched, it was an overnight sensation. The company exploded. Within 3 years, we moved from the garage to a sleek downtown office. We hired 50 employees, then 100. The money started pouring in. Marcus was hailed as a tech genius, a visionary, and true to his word, he made sure I was comfortable. He paid off my mortgage. He set up a generous dividend structure. I was a millionaire on paper, though I still drove my old Subaru and bought my clothes on sale. But then, Marcus met Veronica. Veronica was a high-powered public relations executive hired by our new marketing firm. She was 10 years younger than me, sharp as a tack and utterly ruthless. She wore designer suits and spoke in corporate buzzwords that always made me feel small and uneducated. From the moment she looked at me, I knew she saw an obstacle. When they got married, the shift was subtle at first. The family dinners became less frequent. When I did go to their new, sprawling mansion, Veronica would make passive-aggressive comments about my appearance. "Eleanor, darling, we must get you out of those outdated cardigans. You represent a tech firm now. You need to look the part." Then, the erasure began at the office. Veronica convinced Marcus that my presence in the boardroom was disruptive to the modern corporate culture. She argued that having his mother taking notes and asking basic financial questions made him look like a little boy rather than a CEO. "Mom, it's just for the best," Marcus told me one afternoon. unable to meet my eyes. The company is evolving. We have venture capitalists looking at us now. Veronica thinks it's better if you step back from the day-to-day operations. You'll still get your checks. Just enjoy your retirement. I swallowed the lump in my throat and agreed. I thought I was doing the right thing for my son. I thought a mother's job was to step back when her child no longer needed her hand to walk. I stayed home. I tended to my garden. I watched from afar as Novatech became a behemoth and as my son transformed into a stranger who only called me on holidays. The only bright spot in my life was Lily. Marcus had a daughter from a brief college relationship, and I had practically raised her. During the early days of the startup, Lily was bright, fiercely loyal, and saw right through Veronica's plastic exterior. When Lily turned 19, she insisted on getting an internship at Novatech, much to Veronica's annoyance. Everything came crashing down 3 weeks ago. It was a Tuesday evening. A thunderstorm was raging outside, rattling the windows of my quiet house. I was sitting by the fire, reading a book, when someone pounded frantically on my front door. I opened it to find Lily, completely soaked to the bone, shivering violently. She wasn't just cold. She was terrified. "Lily, sweetheart, what's wrong?" I asked, pulling her inside and grabbing a towel. She couldn't speak. She just walked into the living room, pulled a small, silver USB drive from her jacket pocket and set it on my coffee table as if it were a live grenade. "Grandma," she whispered, her teeth chattering, "I found something." I stayed late at the office to finish filing some digital archives for the HR department. Veronica left her primary computer unlocked. She never does that. I know I shouldn't have looked, but... Lily broke off, a sob catching in her throat. "Grandma, they are trying to destroy you." I felt the room tilt slightly. "What do you mean, destroy me?" Lily opened her laptop with shaking hands and plugged in the drive. She opened a folder labeled Project Transition. "Veronica and Dad have been in secret talks with Apex Equity Holdings. It's a massive private equity firm. They want to buy Novatech for $80 million, Lily explained, her voice trembling with rage. "But Apex won't buy the company. If there's a majority shareholder who isn't an active corporate officer, they want full control." "But I own 51%, I said, confusion clouding my mind. "They can't sell it without my signature." "That's exactly what Veronica figured out," Lily said, clicking on a PDF document. "So, they decided to dilute your shares to zero, without telling you." Lily pulled up the documents. My eyes scanned the complex legal jargon, but the numbers were clear. Over the past 8 months, Marcus and Veronica had been holding secret executive board meetings. They had forged my signature on attendance logs. They had passed resolutions to issue millions of new, unauthorized corporate shares, allocating all of them to a holding company controlled exclusively by Veronica. By artificially inflating the total number of shares, my 51% ownership had been mathematically diluted down to less than 2%. They hadn't just pushed me out of the office, they had systematically robbed me of the company I built. "There's more," Lily choked out, tears finally spilling over her cheeks. She opened an audio file. "Veronica has an app that records her dictations for her assistant. I found this from last week." She hit play. Veronica's sharp, condescending voice filled my living room. "Make sure the Apex executives are seated near the front at the gala. Marcus is finally on board with the final phase. We'll announce the acquisition right after the champagne toast. As for Eleanor, the old hag is becoming a liability. Once the ink is dry, we are moving her into the Shady Pines facility, upstate. Marcus already signed the medical proxy, claiming she's showing signs of early dementia. We freeze her remaining accounts to pay for it. sell her house, and we leave for the new corporate headquarters in Dubai by next spring. She won't even know what hit her." The audio clicked off. The silence that followed was the heaviest I have ever experienced. I sat there on my floral sofa, looking at the glowing screen of the laptop. My son. The boy I had given my last dollar to. The boy whose dreams I had funded with my own blood and sweat. He had signed a medical proxy, declaring me mentally unfit. He was going to lock me in a cheap nursing home, steal my company, and flee the country with his sociopathic wife. Grandma Lily cried, falling to her knees and burying her face in my lap. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I didn't cry. The time for tears had passed long ago, back when my son stopped calling me. What filled my chest in that moment wasn't sorrow. It was a cold, terrifying, absolute clarity. I stroked Lily's wet hair. "Do not apologize, my brave girl," I whispered, my voice sounding like steel. "You have given me the greatest gift anyone could ever give me. You gave me the truth." "What are we going to do?" she asked, looking up at me with terrified eyes. "They have lawyers, Grandma. They have millions of dollars. They're going to announce the sale at the 10-year gala." I looked at the USB drive, resting on my coffee table. I thought about the thousands of hours I had spent in that dusty garage, making sure my son had food to eat while he coded his dreams. I thought about Thomas and how he would have burned the world down if he saw someone treat me this way. "Let them plan their gala," I said, standing up. My joints didn't ache. My hands didn't tremble. "Tomorrow morning, we are going to make a phone call because Veronica forgot one very important thing when she decided to play corporate warfare." "What's that?" Lily asked. "I may look like an old woman who knits," I said, a dark smile forming on my lips. "But I spent 30 years negotiating with ruthless antique dealers. I know how to spot a fake, and I know exactly how to destroy one." The war had officially begun, and I was not going to be a casualty. The next morning, the sky was a bruised, heavy gray, perfectly matching my mood. I didn't bother putting on one of the sensible, muted sweaters Veronica always preferred me in. I put on a sharp, tailored black suit I hadn't worn since Thomas's funeral. I applied red lipstick. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman ready to burn an empire to the ground. Lily drove us downtown to a nondescript office building, tucked away in the financial district. We weren't going to a flashy, glass-walled corporate firm. We were going to see Arthur Sterling. Arthur was a 70-year-old bulldog of a corporate attorney. He had helped Thomas and me negotiate a brutal lease dispute 20 years ago. He was old school, ruthless, and despised modern corporate greed. When we sat in his leather-scented office and laid out the printed emails, the forged board minutes, and played the audio recording of Veronica's dictation, Arthur's face turned the color of a thundercloud. "This isn't just a breach of fiduciary duty, Eleanor," Arthur growled, taking off his thick glasses. "This is massive, coordinated corporate fraud, forging a majority shareholder's signature to illegally dilute stock prior to a private equity buyout is a federal crime, and the medical proxy. Falsifying medical intent to seize assets is elder abuse and fraud." "Can we stop the sale to Apex?" Lily asked nervously. "We can do more than stop it," Arthur said, a predatory grin spreading across his face. "We can trap them. If we file injunctions now, Marcus and Veronica's lawyers will tie us up in civil court for years. They'll hide the money. They'll destroy evidence. No, we need them to be caught dead to rights in the act of executing the fraud." Arthur laid out the plan. It was brilliant, terrifying, and required nerves of absolute steel. He would quietly contact his associates at the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Federal Fraud Division. We would hand over all the evidence Lily had gathered, because the buyout involved federal wire transfers and international private equity. The authorities would be highly motivated. But for the trap to work, Marcus and Veronica had to believe they were winning. They had to proceed with the gala and officially attempt to sign the transfer of assets to Apex Holdings. For the next 2 weeks, I gave the performance of a lifetime. When Marcus came over for our monthly, obligatory Sunday dinner, I played the part of the frail, forgetful old woman flawlessly. I purposefully left my reading glasses in the refrigerator. I asked him the same question 3 times. I let my hands shake when I poured his coffee. I saw the relief in his eyes. I saw him mentally justifying his betrayal, convincing himself that I truly was losing my mind, that locking me in a facility was an act of mercy rather than a hostile takeover. "Mom," Marcus had said, patting my trembling hand with fake affection, "Veronica and I have been talking. The anniversary gala is coming up. It's going to be very loud, very crowded. We think it might be too much stimulation for you. Maybe you should just stay home." "Oh no, dear," I replied, forcing a fragile smile. "I wouldn't miss it for the world. I want to see my sunshine. Just put me at a quiet table in the back. I promise I won't be a bother." He had frowned, clearly annoyed, but he couldn't think of a polite way to outright ban the founding investor from the anniversary party. "All right, Mom, if you're sure." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I whispered. Which brings us back to the present moment. The ballroom of the Grand Hotel was dead silent. As Lily marched down the center aisle, the microphone gripped tightly in her hand. The spotlight, operated by an AV technician, whom Lily had secretly bribed 3 days ago, snapped away from Veronica and hit my granddaughter, illuminating her like an avenging angel. "Actually, Veronica," Lily repeated, her voice booming through the speakers, dripping with a venom I had never heard her use. "You're the one who is going to be retiring tonight." Veronica's face flushed a violent, ugly red. She gripped the edges of the podium. "Lily, what on earth are you doing? Sit down immediately. You're drunk and making a scene." Marcus stepped forward, his eyes darting toward the Apex equity investors, sitting in the front row, who were looking increasingly alarmed. "Lily, please." "Security," Marcus yelled, waving frantically toward the back doors. "Security isn't coming, Dad," Lily said coldly. "I locked the service doors, and the main doors are being held by someone else." "What is the meaning of this?" Veronica shrieked, losing her polished veneer entirely. "The meaning," Lily said, turning to face the Apex investors, "is that you are about to buy a stolen company." Lily pressed a button on the small remote in her hand. The massive, 20-foot LED screens behind the stage, which had been displaying the glowing Novatech logo, suddenly went black. A second later, a document flashed onto the screen in brilliant, undeniable high definition. It was the secret stock dilution ledger. Gasps echoed through the room. The men in the Apex delegation sat up straight, their eyes narrowing. "For the past 8 months," Lily announced, pacing the floor, "my father and my stepmother have been forging board minutes. They illegally issued 3 million phantom shares to a shell company to dilute my grandmother's 51% ownership down to nothing, so they could sell you this company without her legal consent." "That is a lie," Veronica screamed, her voice cracking with hysteria. She lunged for the microphone stand, but the sound cut out. The AV tech had killed her feed. Lily pressed the button again. The screen changed. It displayed the emails. Large, highlighted text showed Veronica's exact words to Marcus. "Forge the signature. The old woman won't notice. We take the Apex money and run." The ballroom was in complete chaos now. Guests were whispering frantically. The head of the Apex delegation, a stern-looking man with silver hair, stood up, his face a mask of absolute fury. Marcus, the investor, boomed over the noise. What the hell is this? Are these documents real? Marcus was hyperventilating. He looked at the screen, then at the investors, and finally, his panicked eyes found me, sitting in the back of the room. He looked like a cornered rat. It's a misunderstanding. My mother is sick. She's mentally incompetent. We have medical proxy. Oh, you mean this medical proxy? Lily asked, her voice dripping with disgust. She pressed the button a third time. The screen went black. And then Veronica's own voice filled the ballroom, playing from the hidden audio file Lily had discovered. The old hag is becoming a liability. Once the ink is dry, we are moving her into the Shady Pines facility, upstate. Marcus already signed the medical proxy, claiming she's showing signs of early dementia. We freeze her remaining accounts, sell her house, and we leave for Dubai. The collective gasp from 400 people was loud enough to suck the oxygen out of the room. Several people covered their mouths in horror. The absolute, unvarnished cruelty in Veronica's recorded voice was undeniable. Veronica dropped her champagne glass. It shattered against the stage, a sharp, violent sound that mirrored the destruction of her carefully curated life. She stood frozen, her eyes wide with a terror so pure it was almost beautiful to witness. Marcus felt his knees on the stage, literally collapsed. He put his head in his hands, realizing in real time that his entire life was over. This deal is dead, the lead apex investor barked, throwing his napkin onto the table. He turned to his associates. We're leaving now, and Marcus, expect our legal team to bury you for failing to disclose fraudulent ownership. As the investors began to storm out of the VIP section, the heavy oak doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. I remained seated, watching as Arthur Sterling walked in, but he wasn't alone. He was flanked by 4 men in dark suits, wearing federal badges on their belts, and 2 uniformed police officers. The silence that fell over the room this time wasn't confused. It was the silence of absolute shock. Arthur walked down the center aisle, stopping right in front of the stage. He looked up at Marcus and Veronica with an expression of profound disgust. Marcus Vance, Veronica Vance, Arthur's voice boomed, requiring no microphone to carry authority. I represent Eleanor Vance, the legal majority shareholder of Novatech. The individuals behind me are agents with the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Corporate Fraud Division. Veronica let out a choked, guttural scream. She backed away from the edge of the stage, shaking her head frantically. No, this is a setup. That old bitch set us up. 2 federal agents walked up the side stairs of the stage. Marcus Vance, Veronica Vance, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit corporate fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft. Put your hands behind your back. Marcus didn't fight. He let them pull his arms behind him, his body limp with defeat. But as they cuffed him, he looked out into the crowd. He looked past the shocked faces of his employees, past the disgusted glares of his friends. He looked right at me. Mom, he sobbed, his voice carrying across the silent room. Mom, please help me. I'm your son. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor. I smoothed the front of my black suit, lifted my chin, and walked slowly down the aisle. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. I felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on me, but I didn't care. I walked up to the edge of the stage and looked up at the man I had raised. You stopped being my son the day you decided my life was a liability to your bank account, I said, my voice steady, cold, and echoing with absolute finality. I sold my husband's legacy to build you this empire, and you tried to lock me in a cage. To steal it. You are not my son. You are just a thief. I turned my gaze to Veronica, who was weeping hysterically as an agent tightened the cuffs around her wrists, and Veronica, I added, offering her the same icy smile she had given me at the start of the night. Your performance was severely lacking. You're fired. I turned my back on them and walked toward Lily. My granddaughter was crying, but they were tears of profound relief. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tightly, as the police escorted her father and stepmother out the back service doors. The very doors they had planned to use to throw me out. The aftermath of the anniversary gala was swift and brutal. The scandal made front-page news in the financial sectors. Novateka's stock took a severe hit, but Arthur Sterling moved brilliantly, with Marcus and Veronica federally indicted and their assets frozen. The fraudulent stock dilution was reversed. I was legally reinstated as the undisputed 51% majority owner. I didn't sell the company to Apex Equity. Instead, I appointed a brilliant, ethical CEO from within the company's ranks. A woman Marcus had repeatedly passed over for promotion because Veronica found her too intimidating. Marcus and Veronica's marriage survived exactly 3 weeks into their criminal indictments. Facing up to 15 years in federal prison, Veronica turned state's evidence, offering to testify against Marcus in exchange for a lighter sentence. It didn't save her from jail time, but it ensured their mutual destruction. They lost the mansion, the cars, and the bank accounts to pay for restitution and legal fees. I never visited Marcus in prison. Some people in my social circle whispered that I was cold, that a mother should always forgive. Let them whisper. Forgiveness is for those who make mistakes. What Marcus did was a calculated execution of my life. I owed him nothing. 2 years have passed since that night. I am 70 years old now. I still live in the house Thomas and I bought. I still tend to my garden, but my life is entirely different. Lily graduated with honors. I made her a vice president at Novatech, and she is proving to be a sharper, more empathetic leader than her father ever was. But the thing I am most proud of isn't the company. With the massive dividends from my shares, I started a foundation, the Thomas Vance Initiative. We provide interest-free seed money and legal protection to elderly entrepreneurs and seniors who have been victims of familial financial abuse. I spend my days meeting with men and women my age, people who have been pushed to the margins, people who were told they were too old, too slow, or too burdensome to matter. I look them in the eye, and I tell them my story. I tell them that kindness is not weakness. I tell them that our age is our armor, forged by decades of survival. Yesterday, I was sitting in my office at the foundation. Lily came in, holding 2 cups of coffee. She set one down in front of me and smiled. "You look happy, Grandma," she said, sitting across from me. I picked up my coffee, looking out the window at the city's skyline. I thought about the fear I had felt that rainy night when Lily first showed me the USB drive. I thought about the agonizing pain of realizing my son was a monster, and then I thought about the absolute freedom I felt right now, sitting in a building funded by my own resilience. "I am happy, Lily," I said, and for the first time in 10 years, it was the absolute, unvarnished truth. I finally retired the past. And the future. The future is entirely ours.